Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I think we're ready to make a start. Claims never to use that. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Mid Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Andy Mellon, leader of Mid Suffolk District Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting. As usual, may I first remind you all of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that your microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. If the fire alarm should sound, we're not expecting a test, so please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. And finally, we'll be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. So please could members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. I'm just reminding myself to log in as well. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. And if you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you're also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Can I move to the agenda, please? Item 1, apologies for absence.
There are no apologies for absence, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. Are there any declarations of interest? None received. Item 3. MCA/23/44. This is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of February 2024. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? If not, could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Eburn and a seconder? Councillor Weller. Thank you. And a governance officer will now conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received.
And item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
There are no matters referred, Chair.
Thank you. Item 7 is the forthcoming decisions list. I'm sure we've all had a chance to have a look at this. Are there any comments to make? You will notice that the first 6 items are all officer delegated decisions. I did have a question on, let me just find it. Excuse me. On the second page, key decision by officer delegation, this is coming up on the 11th of April, to approve the appointment of Bailey Garner. This is for the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund project. It's not clear who and what they're going to be doing. Can anyone answer that? Who are Bailey Garner? What will they be doing? Director for Housing. Can you answer that one, Deborah?
Yes, I can. So, good morning, members and officers. So Bailey Garner are the consultants that we use to help us initially write our application, and should we be successful, we would hope that they would be undertaking some of the work.
That's great, thanks for that clarification. Any further questions on the forthcoming decisions list? Okay. In that case, we will move on to item 8. This is paper MCA/23/45. This is financial monitoring for Q3 23/24. We've got various officers here to help. We've got Alistair Greer, Senior Business Partner for Capital and Treasury, Jenny Smithies, Finance Business Partner for the HRA Revenue Account, and Sean Coulter, the Senior Finance Business Partner for Revenue. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, Councillor Eburn, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Firstly, just to say thanks again to officers for putting all of this information together. Obviously, everyone's been working very hard on budgets, so to then do the Q3 monitoring at the same time is working overtime at times. So just with regards to this report, as a precursor to it, just to say that we are working on the overall cash flow for the council, better forecasting and long-term planning. So to view this report in the context that work is going on at the moment to look at those particular areas. With regards to this specific report, if we take the general fund first, the report covers general fund, HRA, and also the prudential indicators. So looking at the general fund, the key difference from Q2 forecasts is that it's 500,000 roughly worse than budget from Q2. And the main reason for these changes are to do with the scheduling of business rates. So because we had expected that in the last year's budget that Gateway 14 businesses, there would be some businesses up and running, and therefore business rates would be being paid. That's not the case at the moment, and we're not expecting business rates to come in relating to that until next year. So that takes up a fair amount of that deficit, as it were, versus Q2. We are also just generally looking at business rates throughout the year so that we have, again, better forecasting and a more accurate picture rather than just reporting at the end of year, which used to happen. So it is being reported every quarter from now on. Two of the biggest variances on the general fund are law and governance and planning, and we've addressed these in the Q2 reports. Planning is a slightly improved position from what we expected at Q2, and there's some changes to the law and governance, but those still are the main two areas of the biggest negative variances, as it were. And finally, just on reserves, just to point out, we've got two new reserves that are now noted within the reserves table, and one of those is for financial resilience, to ensure that we've got a fund there, as was agreed at council, to ensure the financial robustness of the council going forward. And the other one is an expected credit loss reserve, which also was discussed at council with regards to our external investments via CIFCO. So that's where we're at the moment with the general fund. On general fund capital, there's been some rescheduling work. Capital obviously is more difficult to forecast when it's going to be spent. If there's changes, it'll be move the amounts into further months, further years, as it were. And that's the main reason for any changes in the overall figures. There's also a couple of issues with regards to the replacement finance system, which has got quite a big overrun in terms of cost, but we're looking at that more closely at the moment. Then moving on to the HRA, we've now got we did have a deficit forecast of 672,000 at Q2, and it's now 3.3 million, but the majority of that 1.9 is to do with an interest payment, which we had discussed during the budget setting process at council, of the week. But we've also got two areas that are highlighted. One is 429,000 for fire prevention and an extra 100,000 or so for property services. So the HRA continues to be under serious strain at the moment financially. The increase in property servicing is due to a change in contractor and some substandard work that needed correcting. So again, we are really trying to get to grips with the repairs and maintenance within the our council housing stock, and to ensuring it's all fit for purpose and fit for our residents. The capital programme for the housing revenue account is due to be further updated, so I don't have any further comments on that at the moment. With regards to the third item on this paper is the prudential indicators. So these are ones that we have to report on every quarter, and as you'll be able to see from the papers, we're within the kind of compliance levels for those, and reporting is as it should be on that. So I'm not planning to go through those, but if anyone has got any questions, I'm sure if I can't answer them, the team that here will be able to do so. So I've got the recommendations on page 13, which are the first ones relate, and sorry, I should have said we need to note the tabled papers, because there were some last-minute amendments to, or there was an incorrect figure, so the papers were republished with the revised figure on. So if the recommendations are on page 3 of the agenda tabled papers, and first one is noting the projected surplus on the general fund of 2.36 million. The second is noting the projected overspend on HRAI deficit of 3.3 million, and an underspend on the capital programme of 23 million. And the third one is saying that we are compliant with the prudential indicators. So I'm happy to propose those recommendations and ask for a seconder. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Winch. Thank you very much. Any questions from Cabinet members on this report? Councillor Winch.
Yeah, I've got two questions. Every time you look at these, you notice something that you hadn't noticed before. On the general fund capital, there's an amount of 440k for empty homes grant, and there's also 340k for grants for affordable housing. What was envisaged that we were going to do with that? We haven't spent it, but do we know? I should know this, but I don't. What were we going to do with that money?
Chair, I think that because those are grants that come direct from government, and I'd have to ask the Director for Housing what the plans are that sit behind those, if you're still there, Deborah.
I am. Thank you. So I wouldn't be able to give you the full detail today, but I can ask Amma, who's our head of housing solutions, what the detailed plans are, and we can ask for that to be put in the minutes.
Councillor Winch. Yeah.
My second question is, when I looked, what I'd done is a quick comparison between the latest view for the HRA versus what we presented at the council. And if I look at our total income, it's gone down by about 100k. If I look at our direct costs, they're better by 300k. What is there a reason? I mean, it doesn't matter because of the council was the sort of latest view, but why is that swung by that amount?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I was thinking one of the reasons was to do with the properties that have been noted in the how many properties are actually it's relating to in terms of the amount of new properties, because that's slightly different from what was expected, is one reason. And I can ask my colleague if she can answer the other part. Thank you.
The forecast in the budget is taken from the business plan, which did account for some of the properties within temporary accommodation differently, where we have them in the cost of services rather than in our income. That will be altered for next year, so we will be in line with the business plan from next year.
Thank you. Any further questions from Cabinet members? If not, Councillor Scarf, do you have any questions?
Thank you. Yeah, well, actually, the portfolio holder's just asked two of the questions I was going to ask about the empty homes grant and grants for affordable housing. My further question would be on the mandatory disabled facilities grant. We seem to be spending more on that, and that's to be welcomed. But I see within the explanation of the variances that we're looking to change the maximum grant for the minor adaptations grant and the discretionary funding grants, and it's coming forward to Cabinet for approval at some stage this year. Always interested in the expenditure on this area because it's something significant, and it's something to date, since I've been back on the council, that we've underspent many years in a row. When will it come to Cabinet?
I don't know. I thought it was fairly soon, but Deborah might be able to answer that. I thought it was imminent, but
I'm not sure of the date, but again, we could note that in the minutes.
Like I say, we'll come back to you with an answer outside of this meeting then. Any other questions, Councillor Scarf? Okay. Okay, so I can now open this item up for debate. Does anyone wish to make any comments on this report? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point that this really highlights the need for kind of really good cost management across the organisation, and that's something that we're also looking at in terms of ensuring that different areas of the organisation are responsible for their budgets and actually really closely monitor the costs and the reasons for any variances, and just to also reaffirm the fact that we are taking a really hard look at all the processes that sit behind the reports that you see, to make sure that we're better on forecasting cash flow and so on and so forth. And hopefully that will come through in the next reports. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. Any further comments? So if not, I think we can move to the vote. And just to note that the recommendations are the ones from the table papers, the agenda supplement. So I'll just read those out. 3.1, that subject to any further budget variations that arise during the rest of the financial year, the projected surplus on the general fund of 2.36 million referred to in section 4.2 and appendix A of the report be noted. 3.2, that subject to any further budget variations that arise during the rest of the financial year, the projected overspend on the housing revenue account of 3.364 million and the underspend on the capital programme of 23.248 million referred to in section 4.3 and appendix B of the report be noted. And 3.3, that the council's compliance with the prudential indicators during quarter 2 referred to, or should that be quarter 3? Probably should be quarter 3. Referred to in section 4.4 and appendix C of the report be noted. I now ask the governance officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That's 6 votes for. Chair, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. So we can move on to Item 9, MCA/23/46. This is update on the regular for social housing referral and our current compliance position. We're going to go to the Director of Housing, Deborah Fenton, who's joining us online for this. And I'll invite the Cabinet Member for Housing and Property to introduce the report.
This is our regular update on the status in relation to our self-referral. We've got a few reds on there where I've got the latest figures this week and they've gone down again. They're always going to go up and down a little bit. I think where we are is it's fairly clear that we've got good visibility of this issue. We're generally on top of this issue. We're currently carrying out an external review by an organisation called Housemark, who are like a benchmarking organisation. So they're going to be checking on the process and sample checking the data so that it gives us reassurance at Cabinet that the information that we're seeing is accurate. But I think the quick summary of this is that we've got good visibility of the problem, we're on top of the problem, and I expect that we'll be able to come out of referral in the near future. I do want to say a little bit about damp and mould, and I've got something that I want to read. I don't normally write things down, but I want to read it out because I would like it in the minutes, because I am a bit nervous about this because the legislation is all changing. So AWAB's law is being introduced after the tragic death of a 2-year-old due to prolonged exposure to mould in his home. AWAB's law is focused on hazards that pose a significant risk to the health and safety of the actual resident of the dwelling. This means that a hazard does not have to be at Category 1 level in order to be in scope. This is because there may be instances where a particular resident is at higher risk from hazardous conditions. For example, a resident with asthma may be at greater risk from a home affected by damp and mould. While the exact details are still out for consultation, it's likely that if a registered provider is made aware of a potential hazard in a social home, they must investigate this within 14 calendar days. If there is a hazard, landlords need to start repairs within additional 7 days and carry out emergency repairs within 24 hours. The Cabinet needs reporting in place to demonstrate that we are complying with this proposed legislation. The total number of outstanding jobs, as is currently shown for damp and mould, does not give Cabinet the required assurance. We need clearer visibility of A, how many potential hazards have not been investigated, B, how many have not been investigated and are more than 14 days old, and C, how many hazards we are dealing with, if any, serious hazards, i.e. where there's a significant risk to a resident.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We'll make sure that's captured in the minutes. So we need a proposer for this. Councillor Winch, you happy to propose that? And we need a seconder. Councillor Stringer. Thank you. So, any questions from Cabinet members first on this update? If not, Councillor Scarf, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. Well, we had a briefing the other day with the Conservative and Lib Dem opposition groups, and a question was asked the other day about this particular area, because I think that the table format and the way it's presented is not overly helpful. And the question really was, a statement was sort of made that quite often tenants can't afford to use the heating at the level at which they need to use the heating in order to help ameliorate the problems of damp and mould, and therefore quite often the problems come back again, and it's an issue that we deal with on an ongoing basis. And I asked the question then, and I'm going to ask the question again now so it's actually available to members of the public, what steps we were taking to ensure there was a holistic approach with tenants to encourage tenants to use social energy tariffs, etc., so we could do as much as possible for the tenants to help them with their situation. The answer I got at that briefing was yes, but I think I would just like to make the point that I think we need to really look at this holistically, because tenants who have damp problems are often tenants who can't afford the heating to the level at which it should be, and I think anything that we can do as an authority to help those tenants has to be put into place and must be a top priority.
Councillor Winch?
I haven't got an answer to the question, but I think it's a really good point. We need to follow it up. I don't know if Deborah wants to comment.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. So we do take a holistic approach at the moment. So there are a number of actions we take. So first of all, we've got two financial inclusion officers, one who works with council tenants, one who works with non-council tenants. We also look at other measures to support residents in terms of things like insulation. So when we go and do a survey, we look at we don't just sort of go in and clean off the mould, if you like. We look at other measures which may be helpful, like insulation, fans, etc. And we can also advise on right sizing. So if the tenant in question is on benefit but is in a property that's larger than their needs, we can advise on that. So there are a number of steps we are taking. Of course, there's always more we can do, and we will continue to work with colleagues and residents, including those on our residents panel, to understand what it is we can do to further assist our residents and tenants.
Thanks for that, Deborah. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. If I can also just come in on that, is that we've also had meetings looking at issues about residents in need per se, and the need for a sort of greater sort of hardship fund type approach, and trying to bring together all of those elements that are useful for residents in terms of if they need financial help, if they need, like you say, help with signposting to areas where they can get further help. So that's a piece of work we're doing at the moment, and we're investigating, because we want to really make sure that all our residents are kind of get support where they need it. But then particularly, the figures on this report that stand out are the damp and mould, and that is an area we really need to work hard at. But if we can do something on that side of things in terms of any kind of fund or support that we can put together, then that will hopefully help. Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Scott? No? Okay, so I think we can now move to the debate. Any contributions to the debate on this item? Councillor Weller and then Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to take this opportunity to commend Councillor Winch and officers for taking this proactive step in advance of the introduction of the of this legislation, this amendment to the Social Housing Regulation Bill, because I think all of us at some time or another have had dealings with tenants who've had problems with damp and mould, and recognise the detrimental effect, particularly on those that have got underlying health conditions, or indeed, as was the case with the sad case in Rochester, in Rotherham rather, with children that are poorly. So I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Councillor Winch and others for getting ahead of the curve and getting ahead of the requirement to put these measures in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to make a sort of similar comment in terms of that I think it's great seeing this information in terms of what's been happening to date, such as with fire risk assessments and water hygiene and so on, and see that that's all really going in the right direction. And I thank everyone involved for getting it to that stage. And then what it really does highlight is that we've got a lot of work to do on the damp and mould issues, but I'm really pleased to see we've got a plan in place for that. And it's really important for all tenants that we get going with that and we get something very clear and sorted out. Thank you.
Any further contributions to the debate? If not, we can move to the vote on this. Now, we are voting to note this report, but I'll ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote now.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. That's 6 votes for, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you. So we can now move on to item 10, which is paper MCA/23/47, the Mid-Suffolk District Council Quarter 3 Performance Report. And we've got Joe Hobbs, Head of Strategic Policy, and Sarah Wilcott, the Director here to support me with this item. And I'll introduce this as the Cabinet Member for Performance and Resilience. So this Quarter 3 Performance Report covers the period October to December last year. And councillors will be aware that the Council adopted the Mid-Suffolk Plan, helping to create thriving and resilient communities in Mid-Suffolk at our Council meeting back in January. However, this Quarter 3 report from October to December clearly predates this, so this report is still reporting based on the previous corporate plan with its 6 key priorities, 21 outcomes and various key performance indicators. If you go to the end of the report from page 84 in the papers onwards, this section reflects the changing priorities of the Council as we look forward to Quarter 4 and beyond. Here our plans are grouped into 4 areas: housing and infrastructure, resilience, community wellbeing and environmental sustainability. So that gives a taste of what future performance reports will look like as we report against the new priorities and an amended set of outcomes and performance indicators. But turning back to the substance of the report, without going into detail, I want to highlight 1 or 2 key achievements in each of the reporting areas. So firstly, customers. Our customer service team are continuing to seek improvements in how we respond to council house tenants. On page 50, it mentions that engagement work within tenants has identified an issue around communication of service requests. And I suppose this is reflected in the fact that only 52% of Mid-Suffolk tenants said that they are satisfied that we listen and act. So action to improve this includes the introduction of a customer relationship management module within our systems in the next few months. For wellbeing, can I just highlight the Musical Memories project running in coordination with Orchestras Live. I attended one of these sessions at Stowmarket Leisure Centre, and I have to say, it was just magical. We had top-class musicians playing, leading, singing, stirring memories and lifting hearts in the way that only music can. And this programme culminates in 2 concerts later this month, in fact 2 weeks today, on the 18th of March, where all the groups will come together in the John Peel Centre, and a piece of music generated by older residents will be performed. So I can encourage Cabinet members to attend that. It will be a very special day. Turning to the environment, there's lots of work going on in this area. We launched our call for land for tree planting during Quarter 3. This was National Tree Planting Week. And we also sowed an impressive over 10 hectares of wildflower planting over 9 sites during this quarter. On economy, a significant achievement this quarter was the adoption of Part 1 of our local plan, and that includes policies to support the local economy. Amongst many other achievements, our culture, heritage and visitor economy strategy was finalised. For communities, this quarter saw the disbursement of over £1 million of community SIL funds paid out to over 40 town and parish councils, over £100,000 of locality grants paid out, as well as Section 106 and capital grants as well. For housing, during this quarter, our annual monitoring report was published, showing that during the year to March 2023, over 1,200 new dwellings were completed, and that included almost 300 affordables, 299 in fact. And that meant that we've been over-delivering in this area. And lastly, health of the organisation. I think overall we can report a really good level of engagement with residents during this quarter. We had 3 neighbourhood plans made. The Disson District one, which is just outside ours but affects some villages in our area. The Elmswell neighbourhood plan and the Walsham Le Willows neighbourhood plan. Lots of engagement on the process of refreshing our plan and priorities. We had waste education sessions in schools and our climate action roadshows, including a very successful event in Stowmarket, working together with the Town Council. So there's lots to report, lots in this quarter 3 performance report, and I'm happy to propose it. Actually, I don't need to propose it because we're just noting it. Any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Winch.
I've got two related questions. One question is, will it be in the revised format next time we see this? And the second question, I don't know if it's a question or a debate, is can we change the timing of this? Can we not have this report coming straight after a quarter end, looking back at the quarter that's just gone and looking forward for the next 3-6 months so it's meaningful from a planning point of view?
Thank you. A couple of comments on that, and I'll ask officers then to come in. So I think the reporting has got a bit closer to the quarter. Previously, we were sometimes a full quarter behind, and we're not that. We're in quarter 4, and we're reporting on quarter 3. So it's got better. I think probably when we have our performance management tool, Pentana, fully up and running, we should be able to get the reports up quicker. But I'll look to Joe to answer that, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, certainly. At the moment, we do align our performance reporting with our finance reporting. We are looking in future to align more so we can actually demonstrate the impact of our budget spending to outcomes that the council achieves. But as Councillor Mellon referred to, we do have our new performance software coming online, Pentana, and that will enable a lot more real-time reporting, and we can report through to Cabinet members through other briefings, such as joint Cabinet briefing. But we do just need to consider ensuring we maintain that connection with our finance reporting, so we can take that away and discuss to see how we can align, because I do appreciate that some of these things that happened back in September feel like a distant memory now when we're looking, we're in March, but we can look to get some more real-time reporting to Cabinet members.
The actual format of the report, so it reflects the Green Party's plan, is that going to change for the next presentation?
Yes, it is. Yes, yeah. No, we're looking towards having those themes from the new plan, and so the previous ones will be disposed of. Yeah.
Yes, I think we can almost treat this one as a transitional report, and then we'll be reporting on the new plans from next quarter. It may take a few quarters for that format to settle down, but it will change. Yeah. Any other questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Davies.
Thank you. I've got a question on, I've got 2 questions. First question is digital inclusion, and I'm a little bit concerned that we noted that quite a high percentage of our tenants weren't digitally active, and we are doing a programme to make people more digital inclusive, but we've only had 19 people on it. So I'm wondering, do we have plans to do a little bit more intensive awareness for people so they can be more digitally included? The other question is more on our KPIs, reflectively showing our organisation and maybe the information that the public want to know. And I'm wondering, I have a list of topics, and I'm wondering whether it's okay to just go to Joe and have a conversation after the meeting. But mainly, I would really like it, because it's a public document, to not have lots of jargon, so that the layman would understand what the acronyms are and what it is that we're talking about.
Okay, 2 good points there. Taking the second one first, and I guess Joe will come in on this as well, but I think the unit who manage this are keen to have Cabinet members' involvement in suggesting KPIs that we might usefully report on. In terms of digital inclusion, I think we probably have to accept that there's always going to be a certain number of our residents who are not going to be online or want to be online, but we're doing the best to make sure that those who want to be trained up have those opportunities. I don't know if Sarah will want to come in and just sort of give some detail on that. Can I hand over to the officers to respond on those 2 points?
I'll take the point around digital inclusion. Thank you, Chair. Yes, we're doing lots of work in that space, accepting that we've got some areas across the districts where digital inclusion is a bit more tricky due to the geography. But the digital sessions that we run in conjunction with the libraries, for example, has become very popular, and we've also been working in some of the sheltered housing schemes to support in that space. But I take your point, the numbers are quite low, and we would certainly want to encourage and make that more widely available across the district. And we are working with Suffolk County Council, particularly as a cohort, to try and address that digital inclusion piece as well, looking at what services are available, what other support services can help in that space. So there'll be a coordinated response to that with Suffolk County as well.
Thank you. And on the KPIs, Jo?
Yes, certainly. No, we'd welcome those discussions, and we'll pick that up with you, Councillor Davies, to make sure that we can have those, because ultimately we want to make sure that the KPIs are what we want to be delivering in all the different service areas, so we'll pick that discussion up.
Any further questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Scarf, do you have any questions on this?
You're preempting that I do, but I do have some questions, Chair. Thank you. Question one is on the level of the contaminated recycling. Obviously, it's red flagged on the report, and it's a worrying trend that it seems to be on the increase. I know we've had some conversations before about what we could do in order to actually get on top of that, but I wonder if we can have some further information about what we're able as a council to do in terms of educating our residents, because I think that's a very worrying trend, and obviously it's a cost factor for us as a council. And then the next question is on page 83, which is the report on the number of days sickness per full-time equivalent. I think I would take the amber warning on that as increasing, and I would say that's probably actually should be a red one, because the statistics for quarter 3 now give us the average number of days sickness per full-time equivalent, actual for the quarter, at 3. Now, I appreciate those figures can be heavily distorted by a handful of staff off on long-term sickness, but I think that is a worrying trend. I sit on another authority, a parish council, where the average number per year is 2, not per quarter. So I think we have got an issue there which we need to look to address, and I just wonder if there's any information you can give me, I mean, after the meeting, obviously, because it's a detailed question, but I just think we need to flag that up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those questions. On the recycling, Councillor Well, are you ready to answer that, or Mark?
Thanks, John. I'm happy to start to answer it, and then maybe I can get a more detailed response from Mark, who's sitting there saying, yeah, the contaminants in recycling is a problem. There is a sort of a recycling campaign that recycles itself around informing the public about what should and shouldn't go into recycling, things like ensuring that materials are clean and loose, and these sorts of things that go into a bit of a cycle. And I think we've noticed from the stats that in response to those campaigns, you do get an improvement for a period, but then they need to be repeated to ensure that the message is driven home. I will ask Mark to come in for a more detailed response on that. So other than to say that the keeping up the messaging, which is required and does go, there's a cost involved in that, apart from on social media. But I'll ask Mark to come in with a more detailed response.
Hello, yes, thanks, Councillor. Recycling contamination's been a continual challenge, as we know. The system's in place; it hasn't been changed. Nothing that we haven't changed any of the materials that can be accepted. We'll soon be bringing forward proposals around simpler recycling as well. So the government's proposed changes there. We've been assessing how that will impact our recycling, and we're just doing some final work looking at that before we expect to bring that back to to members to discuss that and how they want to move forward. So we need to be mindful in any changes that, or any publication and any campaigns that we continue to have about the impact that that will have. Suffolk Waste Partnership do continue to have some campaigns around recycling and what contamination can go there or not, and there's probably some minor levels of impact around the storms and what's been happening there in terms of some contaminated loads and things there potentially. I'm not saying that is the underlying issue to a trend which has been towards contamination increasing slightly, but we've certainly got to look at our changes going forward and what continues to keep recycling simple and understandable for the public.
Thank you for that. Turning to the question on number of days sickness, I mean, I guess looking at it, you could say that we've come up a little bit from a fairly low level. I don't know if anecdotally, I mean, there was an awful lot of sort of re-emergence of COVID and coughs and colds over this winter, whether that's affected those figures, but I don't know if any officer is in a position to sort of comment or give us any further information. Chief Executive.
Thank you. Not in terms of providing further information, as you alluded to, Councillor Scarf, happy to take it outside the meeting and look in more detail. As the leader has suggested, obviously the winter period inevitably figures do go up as there are more coughs and colds around, and so it doesn't surprise me that it's gone up from roughly 2 to 3 in that period of time, but that's not wishing to say complacency at all on that front. It's something we keep an eye on. Appreciate you made reference to the Town Council. I would expect our figures to be higher with 600 staff rather than the kind of level of the Town Council staff, although happy to learn the lessons of what David Blackburn is doing to keep them whipped in shape always and always at work.
Councillor Scarf.
Well, can I just make a general point then, Chair? The performance report as it is at the moment, I like the the green, amber, red traffic light system, because I think that's very useful for members of the public. But I think in a public report, perhaps if something's increasing or it's an amber or a red, we could have some narrative about it included within the report. I just think it helps to give it a bit of context. I think, I mean, the green is great. We never focus on the green. We never focus on the things that are going well. We always focus on red and amber, and that's unfortunate. But if there was some narrative to explain that, I think that would be useful.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I mean, luckily we have very few amber and red, so that's a good situation to be in. So, open us up for debate. Are you ready to debate, Councillor Levy? Was that a question?
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point that as the Chair said, this kind of iterative process, how we're looking at reporting performance, but we do need to be really clear, open and honest about how well the council is doing and how well it's serving its residents and businesses. And one area that we've talked about and is gradually evolving is adding in the financial dimension, so ensuring that is completely and utterly linked in to performance. So again, that we're very clear there. And it's good to see, I think, areas that we are doing well in, but I think as Councillor Scarf's mentioned, we do need to kind of ensure that the areas that aren't, that we're picking up on those. But also in reporting on the things that are really important to residents. So hopefully, as it changes and in the new version of this, that we will be able to show that. But I think also this has got to be meaningful and it's got to kind of have a purpose so that we can actually keep developing, what we're doing at the council within the organisation and keep kind of improving our services for residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Winch.
I think this is already a very useful document. There's a lot of very interesting things in there. I'm really looking forward to the formatting changing, because at the moment, I haven't got a document that tells me how well we're progressing against the plan that we signed off at the council meeting in January. And I think this is the document that gives us the vehicle to communicate with the public to say, are we on target or not on a lot of those priorities. So I'm looking forward to that happening.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment? Okay. This report is just for noting, so we're noting that. We don't need to vote on this item and we can move on. So we move on to item 11. This is MCA/23/48, Community Infrastructure Levy, or SIL Expenditure Programme, March 2024. And we've got Christine Thurlow, Professional Lead for Key Sites and Infrastructure, and Joe Moy, an Infrastructure Officer, joining us. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Heritage, Planning and Infrastructure to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to introduce this report. And before I kick off, I'd like to thank the entire SIL team and the joint member panel that's recently met to look at potential changes which will be coming in, I think it's bid round 15 next May. We're hoping to introduce those changes ahead of. Just to very quickly set the scene about the SIL infrastructure that we oversee here. It is, as the report suggests, there's tens of millions of pounds we now collect and redistribute to try and bring about and enhance community infrastructure where there's been significant planning. I'd just like to point out on page 107, 8.4, when we initially started doing SIL, there were a number of complaints that came in, and the then director, or assistant director as he was then, kicked off a review and an audit of that. And the audit found that our council's team, quote, go over and above what was needed in terms of engagement with communities and helping those people to navigate the system. So we'd set a very, very high bar, and that's always really difficult to keep that up. But all of the evidence that we have from the applicants that certainly that I deal with are finding that ongoing support is, in one, incredibly well received, and two, reaping the rewards in that the projects that are being helped and sustained are those ones that seem to also accord with the newly agreed plan for this council. So that's to be commended and thanked for and supported. So I think this is probably one of the easiest reports to read that you'll ever have. I think it's very well laid out and easy to follow. Happy to move the recommendation that's on, I believe, page 91. It's in two parts. First part is 3.1, that we recommend that the SIL infrastructure expenditure programme and accompanying technical assessments following the SIL bids in appendices A and B be approved, and that the SIL bids for Cabinet to make and to note the delegated decisions. And also there's 3.1 on here as well, isn't it? That the Cabinet also asked to note and endorse this SIL expenditure programme, which includes the position in respect to approved SIL bids for rounds 1 to 12, inclusive Appendix A and Section B, together with the details of emerging infrastructure SIL bids, Appendix A, Section C. So I move that recommendation, Chair. And if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them. If I can't, we have a load of staff that will.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Davis, thank you. Any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Scarf, do you have any questions? Nothing on this? So in that case, we can move to debate on this, if that is felt necessary. Anyone want to make a contribution to the debate? Councillor Winch.
Yeah, I think, as Councillor Stringer said, this is a very clear report. I think it indicates that the SIL system is really working well. There's two bids from my ward in the list, and the feedback I've had about the council and the way everything's been dealt with has been extremely positive.
Thank you. Any further contributions?
Well, that's a hugely contentious debate. Well, I say it's a testament to how well the document's written and how clear and transparent, and the hard work that goes into that early advice given to those that are applying. It does show that you can front load a system and make it efficient, transparent, because frankly I think when we had the debates when Sil was about to come in, I think one of the phrases used was this is going to be a complete bun fight and quite a messy one. You know, if there's substantial sums of money going to projects, that could easily end up incredibly contentious. And I think how well the system seems to be working, and I don't want to jinx it by saying it, that's a testament to the staff and their early engagement, and to actually our communities that have got their head around what is potentially quite a complex system. But anyway, it shows it can be done, and as I recommend, highly recommend the section 3.1 and 3.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the recommendations are quite lengthy, so I'm not going to read them out on this occasion, but they're on pages 92 to 95 in the report. Just to say that there's 5 parishes which are which will receive SIL. So Walsham Le Willows, Crowfield, Thornham, 2 projects in Stradbroke, and then Badwell Ash. So some very good projects spread out across the district. There's 2 in Councillor Winch's ward and 2 in Councillor Linda's ward as well. So yeah, there's some funds getting out there to do some good, which is great. So I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. That's 6 votes for, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Stringer, and thank you to the officers as well. Well, we move on to item 12. This is paper MCA/23/49. This is the refreshed carbon reduction management plan, and we have Sarah Welding, Climate Change Manager here, and Mark Ems. And I'll now ask the Cabinet Member for Environment, Culture and Wellbeing, Councillor Weller, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is our revised carbon reduction management plan. The plan is, it sets out in summary some of the carbon reduction achievements that have been made to date, including some significant benefits, going from switching our refuse collection fleet from diesel to hydro-treated vegetable oil. This was more successful than we thought it was going to be. So we're going to give some thought to where else we could use HVO, particularly, for example, around our public realm fleet, in advance of EV becoming available more widely for some of the big trucks that we use. But more importantly, the plan sets out our key priorities, and these are ambitious. They're building on some of the data that's come from our most recent greenhouse gas report, and that report sets out that 2 of our highest emitters in the district are sheltered housing schemes and leisure centres. The other way around, actually. Leisure centres first, because 41% of emissions across the district come from them, and sheltered housing schemes, which put out 25% of our CO2 equivalent emissions. So we've focused our future priorities on those 2. Being difficult to achieve for different reasons, I guess. The leisure centres already implement some changes that have reduced their carbon emissions, improved plant in those centres, these have made some significant differences, which means that if they're still putting out more carbon than we'd like to see, that there's going to be a tougher job to deal with those. But we're going to grasp that nettle and see what we can do to attack it. There are some things we can do around improving photovoltaic panels, for example, putting more up in some of our centres, and some other steps we can take to reduce the carbon there. And the challenge, I guess, for sheltered housing schemes are there's a couple there as well. So the age of the stock and the fitness of the stock at the moment needs to be assessed in terms of the viability of making improvements to certain of those properties. But certainly there's steps that we should and could and should take to improve the outcomes there. So these are the two key priorities that we've set for the next 2 years. In more detail, though, the action plan, which is set out immediately following the paper in the papers, is a breakdown of in a more granular way, in a smart way, some of the actions that are either in progress or planned to contribute to improving our carbon emissions. So I guess finally, I'd just like to make a couple of draw attention to some amendments in the recommendations that I'm about to propose. At recommendation 3.2, it states that the portfolio holder for environment in consultation with the director will develop, etc. And I think that ought to read the other way around, that it's a director in consultation with the portfolio holder that will make those amendments. It's great, Mark, that you've given me that job to do, but it is yours. But I'm very happy to be consulted about the way you do it. So that's my recommendation for the amendment to that recommendation at 3.2. And there is another slight amendment to the plan itself at page 3, which is on page 227 of the papers, in the contents page to the plan. It states that the forward is from the leaders. In fact, it's not the leaders that have provided the forward, it's the portfolio holders. So just a slight amendment there. But otherwise, I'm very happy to propose the recommendations in this paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stringer. Any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Davis.
I just wanted to get confirmation with regards to the more granular SMART goals that we have, that this will be updated and completed, because there are points along the plan that are not, some of them are not yet signed, and some haven't got all officers on board.
Councillor Weller.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question, and thank you, Councillor Davis, for raising it. Well spotted. There are gaps on the action plan, and it is an evolutionary action plan, I think it's reasonable to say. So later iterations of it will include the detail that's missing at the moment, but also there'll be further amendments and additions made to it as we think of new ways of achieving our aspirations. Thanks.
If not, Councillor Scarf, do you have any questions on this?
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's not really a question, it's just a praise, really, for the way that the plan was brought together, and the way that all parties on the council were involved in that. I was a member of the panel, and I've got to say we discussed a very wide-ranging remit of subjects and possibilities, and I think what you've got before you is a very good document, and I particularly like the document. I think it's easy to read. Just really a comment that congratulate you on what you've done in working with others to achieve a plan which we can all move forward on.
Well, I think we're happy to take that compliment, although I think it goes to the officers as much as us, really. But okay, I think we can move to debate on this item if anyone wants to make a contribution to the debate. Councillor Davis first, then Councillor Winch.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I love reading this report. I love the detail that it went into as well. And I just wanted to give praise to the officers and especially our newcomer, Sarah Wilding. It was much appreciated.
Councillor Winch.
Yeah, I like the direction this is going, and I think we've basically changed, as I see it, we've changed the scope of this a bit. If I look at the report from several, I don't know if it's years because they're all been out of sync, but it was very, very focused on just the direct council's emissions. This has opened the debate up a bit more to say we can have an impact not just on the council's emissions, which we obviously need to keep an eye on, but also on the wider community. My only slight desire for a tweak would be in the recommendations. I think it should be a bit clearer that Sheltered and leisure centres are the recommendations of the things that we need to do for our own direct emissions. But there's another list of things for the wider community that I think are in this document, and they're really important. And we could sell that a bit more, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to make a similar comment to Councillor Winch, actually, that the recommendations are for what the district is going to do. But I think it's fantastic to see such a wide variety of initiatives and engagement with other groups in order to achieve what we all want to achieve in terms of impacting climate change where we can, and taking everybody along on that journey. And I would like to thank the member working group. I think it's great to have a wide enough group of councillors working on this so that we get all views and again, a good engagement. So that's good to see. I think I just want to make sure that it doesn't, and I know it won't, but that it doesn't like sit on the shelf, but it is a iterative document that we keep working forward to ensure that all of these different areas we make progress on, and so when it comes around to an annual one we can really see the difference. But in the meantime, work goes on, so thanks very much.
Thank you. Any further comments? If not, I'll just make a few comments on my own then. Clearly, you know, we as a new Green administration see climate change as perhaps the defining challenge of our times. It's often hidden, it's slow burn, but it will eventually, I think, be seen to be a huge challenge for our society and for this council as well as everyone else. So, yes, there's stuff we can do about our own emissions, and we need to focus on those. But there's a wider task to influence the emissions of the wider society, and there we can't force people to do it, but we have to try and take them with us and enable them to make those changes and choices that will reduce carbon emissions and make the planet more habitable for everyone in the long term. So it's a huge piece of work. If we get this wrong, we'll have failed on every other piece of work that we're doing. But very grateful for this report and the work that's gone into it, and we look forward to trying to get it into place and see the actions coming forward. So if that debate is over, then I'll just read the recommendations, which we've amended slightly. So 3.1 is the same, that the contents of the refreshed carbon reduction management plan and accompanying narrative appendix A and B to report be approved. 3.2, that the Director of Operations and Climate Change, in consultation with the portfolio for the holder for the environment, will develop a funding package to deliver on the priority actions for 24-25. And I will ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Member. That vote is now in progress, and there's an updated recommendation too. Thank you, members. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. That concludes the business of the meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for, it says here Monday the 4th of March, but I think it's probably sometime in April. 9th of April. Do we know the venue for that? Are we back in here?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So we'll be back here in April. Thank you very much. I'll declare the meeting closed.